I hear you're watching a new TV show.
I finished watching a new TV show.
Yeah, I keep forgetting. Like, I should have known this from Dragon Quest that I can't, like, suggest anything to you because you will then just consume it all in a day.
No, it took 2 days.
Okay.
One per season. Okay, so this is going to be long. And listeners, as I speak directly to you for the first time and many times, this show is very, very unstructured this time around, okay? Because there's a number of things I want to talk about. And there's a number of things Angry wants to talk or Scott wants to talk about. But I'm not sure how much of it's going to be really related to D&D this time around.
Well, we have some feedback that will bring us back to role-playing games.
Excellent.
So.
All right.
And to be fair, we never promised that we wouldn't meander. I mean, it's in the title of the show.
It is in the title of the show. If you don't know what to expect when you read that title, then I don't know how to help you.
I think the point of the title is to tell you that whatever you're expecting, don't expect it.
Right.
Expect the unexpected.
Mm-hmm. Except if you expect the unexpected, then the unexpected is no longer unexpected.
No, and then what you weren't expecting, the thing that you should have expected is the thing that will happen, which will be an episode of us just talking about Dungeons and Dragons.
Right. Now that that's cleared up, I want to double check with you.
Is it really?
Yeah. I want to double check with you. I believe you said in our pre-show prep that you had completed season 1 of The Good Place.
As of 45 minutes ago, yes.
Excellent.
We watched the final episode of season 1.
So I can talk to you about season 1 of The Good Place. Spoilers included.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But
anybody who's
not
taking
season
the
2.
suggestion from last time and checking out the show, but has not consumed at least the entire first season in the last week, shame on you.
Right.
And also, be ye warned. Fast forward to God knows what time.
Yeah, I don't know, because this is going to go for a while, probably.
And
I still won't be done with all the things I want to talk about.
Okay. You just have to stay out of season 2, sir.
Yeah, okay. I will try to separate the two.
I will not accept spoilers.
I will try to separate the two as neatly as I can in my mind. So, You recommended The Good Place, and I, not having heard of it before, decided I'm going to check it out. Which I did. And immediately upon viewing the first 10 minutes of the first episode of the first season, was hooked. Absolutely hooked.
It is delightful.
It is absolutely delightful. It is some of the best writing, some of the most thoughtful writing I have ever seen in a TV show.
And it's funny because it is, on the one hand, there is very intelligent writing behind it.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, there's also a level of silly absurdity that it's not afraid to play with.
Right.
And I actually commented on that tonight to Tiny because of the moment where the judgment, or the judge of, well, he was presented as the judge of all things objective in the afterlife.
Right.
Sean.
Right, Sean.
The judge of everything. As he's sitting there, and listening to their case because they're arguing a case before him, he suddenly envelops himself in a cocoon.
Right.
And the angel that is in the show, he explains to the other characters, like, oh, I forgot to tell you, whenever Sean detects any emotion in a person who's appealing to him because he's a being of pure logic, he seals himself up into a cocoon until it all goes away.
Right.
And it's like, that is so delightfully absurd.
And Sean,
it's ridiculous.
Sean is very well played by Mark Evan Jackson.
Yes. Sean was very well played.
Yeah. So here's the thing.
And actually here, I have to say, I just understood the reason for Sean sealing himself in the cocoon.
Mm-hmm.
Because I am still processing the revelation.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So here's the thing. This show, each episode is a half an hour, right?
22 minutes.
Well, commercials, blah, blah, blah. If you're watching it on TV, it'd be half an hour.
Right.
Which puts it firmly in the sitcom realm, right?
Yeah, it's really not the place you normally expect serialized storytelling like
Correct. Nor, I have to say, do I think it's really a sitcom.
No.
It is not. It plays itself like one. It bills itself as a sitcom.
It's disguised as a sitcom.
Yes, but it is not a sitcom. This thing is serious all the way through. There's jokes. People laugh. There's things to laugh about. Great. This is not a sitcom.
No.
I was impressed.
No. It's like, what if Jean-Paul Sartre had written like comedies?
Yeah.
This is what would have come out.
Yeah.
In fact, geez, actually, that's actually pretty apt comparison now that I think about it.
So, to briefly recap for people who didn't, pay attention last time, this gal Eleanor dies and gets sent to the good place. Okay. Where it is explained to her that there isn't really a concept of heaven or hell or anything like that. There's just the good place and the bad place. And you are scored on the activities of your life in terms of how good they were. And if they don't measure up to a certain point, then you don't go to the good place. Which also was
established in the show as a very, very high standard.
Yes, it is an extremely high standard.
Like a fraction of virtuous people get into the good place.
It's questionable whether Gandhi would have gotten into the good place. Now.
But we do know that Abraham Lincoln did get in.
Yes, we do know that. The Ted Danson plays Michael, who is the architect of the good place.
Well, when you get sent to the good place, you actually get sent to like a sitcom neighborhood that has been perfectly designed for the inhabitants that have been chosen for that place, ostensibly.
Right.
So Ted Danson is he was the designer and the designer of that particular neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. And every neighborhood is designed specifically for the people in it to give them the most possible pleasure to be there.
And in addition, each inhabitant is paired up with a soulmate.
Right.
Because there really are soulmates, and they are paired up so that they can enjoy paradise together forever.
Correct.
Right.
Okay, so that's the basic premise.
And this is all like still spoiler-free territory because this is all pretty much explained in the first 10 minutes.
Right. That's just a recap.
There's a fantastic orientation.
That's just the recap of the first episode.
Yeah.
Curious facts to note in the first episode. Every restaurant available in the good place is a frozen yogurt shop.
Yes. Just works out that way. They don't know why.
Houses, yes. Houses are built and tailored to the exact preferences of the individual living in them. And it is through the house and a couple of recaps of her life that Eleanor determines she's in the wrong place. Because none of the memories she has shown, nor the preference for the house, is hers. And in fact, it transpires that she's led a pretty crummy life and belongs in the bad place. So she immediately goes into panic mode and tries to prevent people from figuring out that she doesn't belong there. She is helped in this effort by a psychologist. Is he a psychologist or no? He's a philosophy
professor of ethics.
Oh, professor of ethics. Okay.
Yes.
She's helped in this by a professor of ethics who reluctantly begins teaching her how ethical people behave and goes over some moral quandaries and that sort of stuff throughout the course of the series.
And can I also compliment William Jackson Harper playing Chidi?
Yes.
He's fantastic too.
I have to say there is no bad actor in this series so far.
No, there really isn't.
I thought at first that what's her name?
Tahani?
Tahani, yes. I thought at first that
Jamila
Tahani
Jamil, I believe is her.
I thought at first that Tahani was a wrong note in the cast. Okay? That she was playing way too broad.
Yeah.
And it turns out she's not.
Right. See, that was one. She was one of my first clues.
Oh, yes. Okay, if we're going to talk clues.
Okay.
I have to tell you. I knew what was going on by episode 3.
I think I hit it on episode 4.
Yeah. Because I was comparing what we had all been told, by Michael, with what was actually going on from the people there. And it didn't take very long to realize that only 2 options were available to explain what was going on. And now we are officially into spoiler territory, folks. If you don't want the good place spoiled,
stop listening here until you've watched the first season.
Yes, stop now.
Okay.
The only 2 possible explanations were that A, everybody who was in the good place was not supposed to be there, or B, they weren't in the good place.
Right. And actually, that the first possibility leads logically to the second, because if you think about it, it was pretty early that Eleanor said that she always has had a problem being surrounded by people who are better than her.
Mm-hmm.
And it was sort of at that moment that it's like, if everybody, this would be torture for anybody who doesn't belong there.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, if nobody belongs there, the simpler explanation is not that there's an entire neighborhood of screw-ups, but that, yes, that really is the torture methodology.
Right. And this is beautiful. I mean, even at episode 3, kind of knowing what the twist was going to be, I was still hooked on this series and still interested in seeing where it went and how they were going to do it.
Well, I really wanted. I will admit the series did manage to trick me.
Mm-hmm.
And I did send a message to you about 2 days after we recorded that podcast and said,
right.
I'm sorry the show was not as deep as I thought it was, because I had the revelation around episode 3 or 4 like you. And I'm like, wow, this show is really smart because it's clearly building toward this or building towards something.
Right.
Because then obviously then it's a matter of you want to know which details are And then when they revealed how the mistake had happened with Eleanor.
Right.
And then they revealed how the mistake had happened with, what's his?
Yeah.
Jianyu,
yeah.
Yeah. It was Jason Mendoza.
Mm-hmm.
And they revealed how both those mistakes happened. It actually threw me off the track. I'm like, oh, I guess the show's just silly. I guess the show, it's just a silly comedy written by somebody who took like a 200 level ethics course.
Right.
So for a while it threw me. And it was sort of as we were getting close to the revelation that I was like, no, wait. Yeah, no, it's, because the thing is that final scene of the first season where it is revealed that they are in the bad place.
Right.
And that this was all a plan to get 4 people to torture each other.
Correct.
That I remembered my Sartre.
Mm-hmm.
Because Jean-Paul Sartre wrote a very famous play called No Exit about 3 dead people who are basically trapped in an apartment together for eternity. And they have been basically carefully chosen to completely fail to mesh in any way.
Mm-hmm.
So that over time their relationships would become torture to each other.
Now is this the play that contains the line "Hell is other people"?
Yeah, that is the origin of the phrase "Hell is other people."
Okay.
Was Sartre's No Exit.
Because that's what I remembered, and about episode 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
It's and okay, so here's a bit of trivia. I don't know if you've come across this trivia yet.
Okay.
Apparently, not everybody in the cast was aware of the end.
Really?
Yeah, only Ted Danson and what's her name, Kristen Bell.
Kristen Bell. Okay.
Only they knew how it ended.
Huh.
Nobody else did until the day they went to shoot the last episode of the season.
Okay.
And there is a little video online on YouTube showing the rest of the cast's reaction to the information that you're in the bad place. And they are genuinely surprised. I mean, it's like two of them almost fall out of their chairs. So it's pretty good. But yeah.
So of the four characters, who did you find the four characters who are unknowingly in the bad place? Because we also find out everybody else in the neighborhood was basically a constant. Actually, it's more amusing than that.
Yeah.
But we'll leave the actual explanation so that in case you didn't turn this off, you'll still have some funny moments. Because I think that's sort of a minor thing. But I did find that bit pretty funny too.
Yeah.
I love when Ted Danson is giving his presentation. I'm like, hey, that's, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And man, did Tiny turn against Ted Danson fast. She immediately hated him upon the revelation that he was working for the bad place.
Oh.
And me, I was much more sympathetic to him. Because I'm like, you know, he just works for the universe. He's just a guy doing a job.
Yeah, hang on to that. Which of the four did I like best?
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
I'm not necessarily like best, but which character was the most compelling?
Oh, the most compelling is Eleanor. Absolutely.
Really? You think so?
I do think so.
Okay.
Because I'm very much on the side of, you know, no matter how far down you fall, you can always get back up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I'm I kind of root for her, but also appreciate the fact that she has a lot of baggage she has to deal with in order to get to that place.
Yeah.
So that's why I kind of relate with her best, I think.
It was enjoyable to watch her redemption.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know, because she does gradually become a better person.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the moment where she gave Chidi the book of French poetry and sent him out on the lake.
Yes.
That was a genuinely sweet moment that made me very happy for her. But I actually found Chidi to be such a fascinating character.
Yeah. They don't have any, with the possible exception of Mendoza, who has delightful lines and is highly amusing, but he seems like the shallowest of the characters so far.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, Chidi, they're all good characters with strong details and depth to them.
It's just I found it so fascinating though that his head was so loaded with so many different systems of ethics, because obviously, you know, since time immemorial, we have had philosophers trying to figure out the question of ethics.
Right.
You know, what is right, what is wrong, how do we judge actions, and how do we know the difference, and is there a system for it? And every philosopher has proposed a system, and all of those systems are pretty much contradictory. You know?
Yeah.
And every one of them has flaws. You know, you can find the weakness in every system where it justifies something that you know in your gut shouldn't be right.
Uh-huh.
Or it condemns something that you know in your gut is right. You know? And his head as an ethics professor is so full of all of those systems that he is literally paralyzed.
Yeah.
He cannot resolve any ethical dilemma, and in the end ends up doing the wrong thing, mostly through inaction or failure to make a choice.
Right. I'm trying to remember. I don't think this is a spoiler.
Okay.
I don't think it's a spoiler if you haven't seen the second season.
Okay.
But it seems to me that the reason Chidi has all these ethical systems in his head is because he has always been looking for a way to answer a question that is not obvious yet to us as watchers, as viewers.
Okay, that may be.
So he's got some sort of essential central question that has gone unanswered, and none of these philosophical schools of thought have been able to answer that for him. So that's my conjecture.
Yeah, that's possible. Obviously, see the season 1 revelation, is pretty much like it drops a bomb on things, and it's as it was becoming clear what was happening in that final episode.
Right.
I was also damn curious how they were going to get a season 2 out of it. I'm like, how can we go from this revelation now to the show still being good?
They do it really well. I can't tell you anything about it, but I will tell you they do it really well.
And you're going to have to wait a while because I have no means of watching season 2 until it gets to Netflix, which I believe means season 3 has to be finished on TV.
Gee whiz.
Unless in the move up to Wisconsin, we end up with cable. It would have to be a lot cheaper than it is here before we would pay for cable.
That's going to present its own problems for you, though, I think. Yeah, I mean, you could... Well, no, that doesn't even work. Yeah, well, never mind. Anyway, I'm sure there are some instructions you have been given at some point that you should follow. But anyway, this is a really good show.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to talk about with it. And if we were more organized, we would certainly be having a long discussion about various aspects of the show.
And the morals and ethics in this sort of thing are like they're heroin to me. The good kind of heroin.
Yeah.
I can't get enough of discussing stuff like this.
Yeah, my transition here, by the way. Okay, so you remember earlier I said this isn't really a comedy. It's not a sitcom. Right. It's much more serious than that. There's better things going on than just the jokes.
Right.
My transition from here is that I am reading a book. And I didn't know these two things were going to be kind of sort of related.
Okay.
But I'm reading a book right now called Lamb by, I think, Christopher Moore. It's I'm trying to remember the tagline. It's something like the gospel according to Jesus's best friend, Biff.
Okay.
All right. Now, I tweeted out 3 or 4 days ago when I got the book, probably longer ago than that. But anyway, when I got the book, I just, like I usually do, I tweeted a cover of the book just because. Just to see if there's any reactions to it. And what I got were a bunch of people telling me, oh, this is the funniest book I've ever read. And okay, I mean, fair enough. This isn't a comedy book. This is not a funny book. This is a theologically serious book that has funny bits in it. But those aren't the main bits at all. I'm not even sure that the author realizes he wrote this book, but it's using, and this is kind of something we can talk about in terms of games as well.
Okay.
It uses comedy, not as its main focus, but as a way to frame the actual discussion.
Okay.
I mean, do you understand what I mean by that? It's like a joke is a joke, right? Okay. But underlying a joke is always some sort of truth.
Right.
Otherwise, it's not funny. It's just nonsense. Okay. But with the right joke in the right place at the right time, you open up a way of thinking about something that you might not have considered before.
Right.
And this is what I think both The Good Place and Lamb are doing. Okay, the jokes are just there to open up the thought process and to get you to consider things from a different angle or a different point of view. So I'm like 60 odd pages into Lamb, and I'm like having some serious thinking episodes as I read bits of the book.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, okay, what in the world? Because basically what Lamb does is it takes Jesus and Biff from about the age of 10, which is sort of the age where as a young Jewish man back in those times, you were looking at what your future career was going to be, which was probably going to be whatever your father did. And so you were beginning to apprentice to your father, and it was a big time of change, essentially, for an individual. They also happen to be the years of Jesus's life that are not covered very strongly in the Bible.
Yeah.
Okay, they're like glossed over. Like, oh yeah, he was a kid for a while, and now he's an adult by the time you see him again.
Mm-hmm.
So this is filling in that period. But in terms of what's going on, and I'm assuming that the details are reasonably accurate enough to get the point across. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
And every paragraph is, or not every paragraph, every chapter is an opportunity to reconsider something you thought before.
Okay.
And it's been very interesting. I will link to it in the show notes. Like I said, it's got funny bits in it, and everybody who noticed it and commented on it on Twitter thought, "Oh, that's the funniest book I've ever seen." So it's got that going for it. But as far as I'm concerned, this is a much more serious book than that.
Well, I've always said that about satire in general. That satire is sort of a Trojan horse.
Mm-hmm.
It is a way of getting someone to open their mental gates so that you can sneak an idea in there.
Yeah.
And comedy in general works the same way. If you can disarm someone with something that seems like a lighthearted comedy, they'll start laughing at a thing before they realize that they should be thinking about it.
Right.
And then by the time they realize it, whether they're inclined to agree with it or not, it's already in their head and they have to consider it.
Yeah.
That's what comedy and satire are extremely dangerous.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. They really are.
Yeah. It's and it's
they're very powerful.
They are very powerful. You can change a lot of things just by being funny.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just put it like that. Okay. Far more things, I think, than you can by being very, very serious.
Yeah. Well, that is certainly true, because as soon as you start moralizing or preaching at people,
mm-hmm.
You are immediately going to run into issues. Well, first of all, nobody likes to be moralized or preached at to begin with, and
right.
That's something that Hollywood needs to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And then and beyond that is you run into confirmation bias,
mm-hmm.
which is as soon as someone is saying something that you don't agree with, in an earnest way, that they're saying it in an earnest way that you don't agree with, the tendency of your brain is to immediately start shooting holes in what they're saying.
Right.
Okay. I'm not, even if you're the sort of person who will listen to things you don't agree with, which I think is very important. It is very important to constantly listen to things you don't agree with. But even if you're the sort of person who will listen to that, your brain is jumping ahead and already starting to shoot down earnest statements of things that you genuinely don't agree with or don't believe are true or whatever, things that you would normally dismiss.
Right.
And if you're too busy laughing, then because that's an emotional response, it short circuits the reasoning part of your brain and lets those ideas get in.
And I think that's important to realize as you watch things like The Good Place or Read Lamb or whatever. I mean, there are other avenues where that sort of thing happens, and other entertainments that do that same thing as well. I think it's important to realize that you will, in both of these cases, possibly come across something that will offend you in some way. Because these two shows, okay, funny, or the show and the book, they're funny, but they're not goofing around. They have something very important and serious to say. And whenever very important, serious to say stuff happens, there's always people that disagree with it or want to argue it or whatever. So just be aware. Depending on your worldview and the things that matter to you, you might run into a couple of problems in either the book or the show.
Mm-hmm.
So just be prepared for that.
And my earnest recommendation, and not to get too high-minded here, but it is the smart person who runs toward the things that offend them.
Yeah.
Because that's where you strengthen your own beliefs. Your beliefs are tested, and if they are good, if you're really concerned about the truth, like actually figuring out what's right, then you always want to be listening to things you disagree with instead of things you agree with. You know?
Yeah.
So I love being offended. Well, no, I don't. Okay, clearly I don't. But I was in going through a period not too long ago where I found that I was surrounding myself in my own echo chamber.
Mm-hmm.
Where I was cutting out things that, you know, challenged my way of thinking. And I realized intellectually that's extremely unhealthy.
Oh, yeah.
And I have condemned people for doing exactly that as basically that's stunted intellectual growth. And then I found myself doing the same thing. So, you know, I advise people now, if you want to figure out the truth about something, try to disprove what you know. Go look for evidence against it.
Mm-hmm.
You know? But anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry.
That's that bubble we've mentioned one or two times on here.
Yeah.
I feel like I should let you talk about something before I dive into the rest of this stuff.
Oh, geez. Well, see, now, I mean, backing away from the high-minded stuff, I've been playing a new game.
Uh-oh.
I finally rage quit Chain of Memories. It finally got to me. I think I'm 2 floors from the, like, you're climbing up through this castle.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm 2 floors from the top of the castle, so I've climbed through 11 floors of this thing. And I finally hit a boss that was frustrating me, and I could not figure out a tactic for beating him, and I tried 3 or 4 times, and that's when my annoyance at the rest of the game that I wasn't really enjoying got to me. And I'm like, you know what? I don't care. So I started playing another game that I had been meaning to play, and that is Horizon Zero Dawn.
Oh. Very interesting.
Mm-hmm. It's like, well, have you ever fantasized about being a pseudo-Native American and going out and hunting robots and then harvesting the delicious, tasty robot meat, bringing it back home and feeding your family with it?
I cannot say that I have.
Because that's the game. Yeah, so the premise is it's one of those it's a post-apocalypse.
Okay.
You know, where there was an apocalypse, and then after the Fallout era of the post-apocalypse,
right.
Eventually civilization is completely collapsed, and then a new primitive civilization emerges.
Okay.
So now we're back to like clearly you start out as a member or an outcast from a tribe of not Native Americans.
Right.
Okay, I mean all of the pop culture imagery is there. You know. And then from there is a nearby tribe of sun worshipping, basically a theocracy. You know, but it's all like the wilderness amongst the ruins of ancient civilization that are so overgrown that the natural world has just started to swallow civilization back up. Except that roaming around the world are herds of robots. There's robot deer and robot cows and robot velociraptors.
Okay, why?
Because I don't know yet.
All right. Fair enough. The game has not deigned to reveal that information to you yet.
You know, I actually can't say that it won't.
Right.
Okay. There does seem to be a focused plot, and there does seem a promise of revelations. Like, I am on a quest line right now that seems to promise to show me where the robots are coming from. There is an implication that there are robots building robots, or a robot factory or something. So there are automated factories that are supplying these robots. But basically the gameplay is sort of... You know what it is? Okay. First of all, I am thoroughly enjoying the game. I am very addicted to it. Okay, cool. It is open worldy. It's the big open world sandbox where you go to different hubs, and then you get all the quest givers, and then you go out and do 16 different quests, or if you just want to, you can go hunt for stuff and take down different robot herds and gather their robot materials and use them to upgrade your equipment, and
right.
And it's one of those play it your way type games where, oh, there's a herd of robots over there. Do I use the stealthy approach, or do I set a bunch of traps, or do I sneak up and shoot it in the weak point, or do I possess one of the robots so that it will kill the other robots because you learn how to do that somehow? It's the style of gameplay that I'm talking about here. It's one part Far Cry to one part Shadow of Mordor to one part The Witcher. And this is really the thing, okay? It is a very shallow game. For all that, and I know this was a very beloved game, and I know exactly why it was beloved. And it was beloved because, unlike clever comedy and satire, the messages that it clearly wants to get across are emblazoned across the game in mile-high letters of fire.
Oh.
Okay? The writers had an agenda and never missed a moment. I'm not going to comment on the agenda because I actually don't care about the agenda. It doesn't stop me from enjoying the game.
Right.
It's just at the same time, I know when I'm being preached to. And I'm just not interested. So, which, like I said, if the game wanted to get me to think about these issues, it should have been a little subtle.
It failed.
But we can't have it's like it's the subtlety of WALL-E's environmental message.
Oh, though that right? Good, huh? That subtle.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let us just wallop you over the head with it from the start.
Yeah, combined with a few other virtue signaled right-minded attitudes.
Oh, okay, all right.
Anyway, but again, I don't really care about the themes of it. It just it doesn't. The main character is somewhat compelling. Though I do reserve the right to take that back, because right now she's sort of the snarky atheist who is just ripping apart everybody's beliefs.
Oh.
She's, because the tribe did bad by her. So she's the objective, the objective rationalist who goes around basically bad-mouthing the tribe's beliefs, even though the tribe is, she's ostensibly on the side of the tribe. So stuff like that. But apart from that, the game is also shallow in that it is a whole bunch of very interesting gameplay elements, not that there is just not enough of to make a game out of. So like I said, you have the Far Cry sort of living off the wild thing,
right? And
you combine it with the Shadow of Mordor being able to, sneak up and assassinate things by using their weaknesses, and then eventually being able to possess them and use them against their weaknesses. Plus you have like the Witcher vision that you can use to track things and see weak points, and you have to research the monsters, and you have the bandit camps, and there's upgrade tracks for your equipment, and it's like every open world game you've ever played.
Okay.
It's just, I'm really addicted to it because it's the right mix of all those elements to be fun.
Neat.
And it's not so sprawling where, Like The Witcher 3, as much as I was enjoying that game, I looked at how much I had done, after hours and hours and hours and hours of play, and how much of the map I had actually revealed. And I'm like, I don't have time for this in my life. I don't. I'm going to be here for another 70 hours. Because I'm the guy who has to, go to all the points of interest and
sure.
do all the quests.
Collect all the things.
Yeah. And Horizon Zero Dawn seems to be just shallow enough that it's manageable. So I'm thoroughly enjoying it, but I know there are people right now who are like apoplectic because this game was the second coming, and it did sell really well. But at the end of the day, it is just a shallow game that took a whole bunch of other elements and combined them together and layered them over the top of a none too subtle, but overly virtuous message.
So would you say it did just good enough?
Yeah, I'd call it 3.5 out of 5.
Okay.
You know what? No, I'd actually even call it 4 out of 5.
Oh.
Because I want to go, like after we get done recording tonight, I'll probably go back and play it for another hour. I want to keep doing it, but it's a popcorn game, and I don't care what anyone else says. It's a shallow game.
All right.
So, but yeah, that's it. Nothing as clever as the Lamb to talk about from me. Well, I also did, by the way, pick up that Star Wars book. You were right; it was Heir to the Empire, the beginning of the Grand Admiral Thrawn series.
There you go.
And like a quarter of the way through it now, like why didn't J.J. Abrams do this as the movie?
Yeah. Okay. So we can talk about that. We'll just segue right into my next thing.
By all means.
My next thing is, nobody told me that season 4 of Star Wars Rebels had aired and ended.
Oh, okay.
In fact,
if you're blaming me specifically, I didn't even know what it was.
I'm not. In fact, not only did the season end, the show ended.
Oh, that good, huh?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
The 4th best film in the Star Wars universe? No, it's not. No, it is not the 4th best. I'm going to say it. You're all going to hate me, and everybody who thinks they are a Star Wars fan is going to hate me, but I will tell you right now, the full season, the full series of Star Wars Rebels is the best Star Wars story going. So
like, you mean better than the original trilogy?
Yes. Bump 4, 5, and 6 down one notch.
I cannot disagree with you because I haven't watched it.
Right.
But I am skeptical.
I know you're skeptical. I understand that. That is not a problem. I caught up on the last season of Rebels because I'd watched The Good Place in its entirety, and it's amazing. It's just like it's a story told by somebody who knows how to tell stories.
Okay.
Dave Filoni, who is the guy who runs the entire Rebels series, and also the same guy that ran the Star Wars Clone Wars second animated series, the CGI one.
Mm-hmm.
He is a phenomenal storyteller. And the thing is, that 4th season of Rebels is amazing. And it's largely amazing not because of all the neat things going on screen, which there are a lot of.
Mm-hmm.
But it's amazing because he managed to take every significant character and wrap them up in a complete character arc by the end of the series.
Okay, that's high praise.
That is, yeah, I know, but it's so infrequently done, you know.
No, I was not being facetious. I do believe that's high praise in this day and age.
Yeah,
that somebody can actually produce multiple character arcs.
It was so good. It was so good, this 4th season, that I want Dave Filoni to direct a Star Wars movie, which I will go see. Just because his name is on it. All right. And yeah, I was going to say, you know how I feel about the Star Wars movies now.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have not watched Rebels, you're going to have a hard time of it, but I would suggest probably Disney XD is the place you want to go, on the internet, because they have, I think, all of them up there. Although it depends on your cable provider as to whether you can access them or not. Anyway, the point being, I'm going to say, yeah, watch all of Rebels and all 4 seasons of it, and just be amazed by what happens by the end of it.
I appreciate your recommendation. I'm not sure that it's one that I'm going to take you up on anytime in the near future.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to have to kidnap you, put you in my basement, and make you watch them. I can tell.
You would not be the first person to try to kidnap me, sir. Better than you have tried. And failed.
But yeah, I mean, if you're on the fence about Rebels, cartoony Star Wars, it's dumb. No, sorry, it's the best Star Wars story that's been told in the last, I'm gonna say, 30 years at least.
I don't have any problem, by the way, with cartoons.
Yeah,
you know me well enough to know that.
I'm aware. I'm aware.
I still think Batman the Animated Series was some of the best storytelling in the entire Batman franchise.
It is.
Once you get out of the first season, really.
Mm-hmm.
Like, man, it took me, because I only started watching it recently.
Mm-hmm.
Or I only watched it recently. I guess about a year ago, I finally sat down and watched it. But I had tried several times before. And episodes like in the first season, Christmas with the Joker.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, really? This is what people are telling me is the best storytelling in Batman? And then you hit episodes like the one with Harvey Dent and the one with Mr. Freeze.
Mm-hmm.
And the retelling of the origin of Harley Quinn. And you're like, okay, now I get it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Batman Mask of the Phantasm is the best Batman film.
Really?
Yeah. That's my unbiased opinion. In fact, the animated series Batman is the only Batman I like.
I have a very warm place in my heart for the first and even the second when Tim Burton was doing
it. The Tim Burton ones.
Yeah, with Michael Keaton.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Jack Nicholson. I enjoyed Jack Nicholson's Joker far more than I enjoyed Heath Ledger's Joker.
Yeah.
You know, there was a man who loved his work. I mean, that's part and parcel of the whole Joker thing.
Mm-hmm.
I never once got the impression that the Joker played by Heath Ledger was actually enjoying anything he was doing.
On a related Star Wars note,
yeah.
This is okay. So this is 2 pieces tied into one piece. You remember I said I had begun work on the Transit RPG again.
Yes, I recall.
Yes, I finished phase 1 and phase 2 of that work over the last 2 weeks.
Congratulations, you.
Thank you.
You've had a very productive 2 weeks.
It has been. It has been strangely productive. And I'm now in the phase where I'm some fluff and a proofread away from having a complete beta ready for folks that might be interested. But anyway, it was suggested to me as I completed these phases that I reward myself in some fashion.
That was part of the suggestion. Yeah.
Yes. So I did so by purchasing for myself some game materials that I might not otherwise have purchased.
Mm-hmm.
So arriving today, an entire day early, believe it or not.
I believe it.
Are some FFG...
Oh, wait, this is you. I don't believe it.
Yeah, I know. Are some FFG Star Wars RPG books that I did not previously have.
What all did you get?
Okay, do you want the list? I got 5.
You very rewarded yourself.
That's right. Good reward is worth doing. I've got a book for Edge of the Empire called No Disintegrations, which is their Bounty Hunter source book. I got a book for Age of Rebellion, which is titled Friends Like These, which is an entire adventure module. That sounds really awesome, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently there's a renegade Imperial officer who has run amok and, anyway, causing problems, all kinds of stuff going on. I got, for Force and Destiny, I got Endless Vigil, which is a source book for Sentinels. Also for Force and Destiny.
Sorry, a Sentinel is
a form
type of Force user?
Yes, a type of Force user.
Okay.
And I've got, for Force and Destiny, Ghosts of Dathomir, which is another adventure module.
Oh.
And if you're a Star Warsist, you will know the reference there, I think. The Witches of Dathomir, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah,
so I got that. And
double toil and trouble, right?
Yeah, something like that. And then I got the Era source book we were talking about, Dawn of Rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
And it is amazing. It has, it literally, I don't know how they did it, man, but they managed to put everything in it that I wanted to be in it. So it's even better than I thought it might have been. So that's good. I think I talked about this last show, which my anticipation of this, it's basically the Rebels and Rogue One thing kind of all combined, that era combined into things, and it's got all kinds of nice stuff in it that I honestly cannot wait to play around with.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. They've even added, and I'm not entirely sure how this works, because I haven't had a chance to read up on it all, but they've added like 2 new Force traditions or Force user kind of guys. One's a Force adherent, which if you saw Rogue One is the blind guy who's all the forces of me and I am with the Force and blah, blah, blah. You know, that kind of stuff. And then you've got a Padawan survivor, which is Kanan Jarrus from the Rebels series are in there. So I haven't read up on them, so I'm not sure if they're entirely different or they're just variations, but it's interesting. I can't wait to dig into it a little better and see what all it's got going for it. But it's awesome.
Oh, very cool.
Awesome.
Well, fortunately, we do have other people who also send us stuff too.
Oh, do we?
Yeah, I believe. Do we? Don't we? This is your. I'm out of my depth here. I almost said I'm out of my gourd. Which, like number one, it's an interesting Freudian slip, but number two, who says that?
Yeah, nobody that's not on a cartoon.
Right?
Yeah. You are correct. We have received some feedback from some listeners about some things.
Good. You stepped up and did it, because usually it's your job to do that transition.
Right. A person going by the name of Tramp wrote in via email and says, I wanted to ask you both how you both typically like to handle experience points in D&D games you run. Do I need to read the rest of that, or do we know what question is coming?
You go ahead, read the rest.
Okay, I'm looking at the 3 pillars ideas the designers have spoken of and wonder if a mark wasn't missed by building the experience around all 3 pillars rather than primarily the combat. I know story XP is often given by DMs and the pre-made modules, and I know Angry has spoken at length about options in his Mega Dungeon articles, but I wanted to see what methods you prefer. As written, Milestone, or other. Personally, I'm not a fan of Milestone experience, but I also think the current rules as written are lacking. I like when they ask a question and then answer it for themselves.
Right. By the way, in case you were interested in my answer, I mean, you want to give your opinions, get your own podcast.
That's right. No,
sorry.
No, but it is like because the first thing that tells me is, okay, just keep doing it the way that you like, right. And don't worry about how other people do it.
And see, I'm a contrarian, so the first thing I do when I see that is start coming up with arguments for why Milestone experience is the best.
Yeah. Because it allows me as the GM to control when the advance happens and therefore be prepared to scale the encounters and challenges appropriately.
Plus there's no math.
Yeah, there's no math.
See, that's the like a lot of people who go for the milestone experience use that as their main argument is I don't want to be doing all the math.
Yeah, you don't. You just hand out the experience and then your players add it up and they let you know when they're ready.
Right? It's like, what math is involved in the Well, okay. So, let me ask first, before we start going crazy. What experience point system do you generally use or prefer?
Whichever one pleases me most at the time.
Oh, so you just...
If I have a story point, right? I've got like a big story point that I know is coming up at period X. Okay. I am likely to, just to make sure everybody is in the right range, hand out milestone experience at point X -1. Okay.
Right.
But I also am equally as comfortable going, okay, that encounter was worth 75 points each. And just letting it go like that and let them accrue whatever they need to accrue as they go along. And like I said, let me know when they have reached a point at which they can level up. This used to be much harder to do in earlier versions of D&D because everybody leveled differently.
Right. See, I don't mind the everybody leveling at different rates or different things idea. I like, it was necessary in older editions because the balance between characters wasn't really an issue, so you just slowed down the wizards so that they wouldn't get too powerful too soon.
Right.
Yeah,
instead of balancing the wizard, just slow them down.
Right. No, and then they gave up on both. It's like, well, don't balance the wizard, but don't slow them down. Let's just keep everything as is.
Yeah. But I feel like there's like more than one way. Depending on even between, say, milestone and as written, there's still a variety of ways you can award experience that are like subgroups of those.
Right. And then there's, he did include other.
Yeah.
But see, I will, first of all, I agree with what Tramp is saying, that the D&D designers totally did miss the mark. Because they very, like, if you read your DM's guide, it will say, hey, if you really feel the need to, you can award XP for other things. But it does say the main thing that people get for XP is defeating foes.
Yeah, it's very vague on being able to use it anywhere else.
It does, I will say to its credit, they have at least gone as far as saying, and by the way, when we say defeating, you don't have to kill. If you run them off, or if you outmaneuver them, or you trap them, or whatever, that counts too. That is stated in the DMG.
Right.
So at least they have gone as far as you don't have to kill absolutely everything. But I really do think they've missed the mark, and I think also in doing so, they have created a math issue that doesn't need to be there. Because the way I do experience, and the way I've done it for a long time now, is I don't do it on a per combat basis. Or like, I don't do it, like, when you kill a monster, you do not get experience points for killing the monster in my universe.
Right.
Okay. When you overcome an encounter, you get experience points for overcoming the encounter. Okay, and when I say overcoming an encounter, that could include a combat, but it could also include getting past a guard, like bluffing your way into a place, or sneaking into a place, or like getting information that you needed from someone who was not inclined to give it to you. Pretty much as soon as there is a goal in a scene, and there is something that is working against the players, such that the players have to use a combination of clever plans and die rolls, and it could be 100% clever plan and 0% die roll, or 100% die roll and 0% clever plan, depending on what they do. As long as there is a possibility of winning, a possibility of losing, and some risk or loss associated with losing, even if the risk or loss is just, well, now you can't get into that place, then as far as I'm concerned, that's an encounter, And I give experience points for that. And I do this very simply. I figure out what the medium experience for a combat encounter is, like five PCs in 5th edition, first level encounter. They get what, 200, so they get 1,000 XPs or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's 200 XP, whatever it is, right? Whatever that is my baseline for every encounter. Okay? Whatever the encounter is. If they get through the encounter by the skin of their teeth and it costs them a lot, I usually cut the experience points in half. If they fail at the encounter, such that they are turned away and have to do something else, if they can't repeat the encounter or can't get another way around it, if they just have to suck up the loss or the lost resources, then I give them 1/4 the experience.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also give experience points for story goals, or basically accomplishing goals, which is not the same as milestones. Like if the adventure is go kill the dragon, then they get experience points, for the encounter with the dragon, but they also get a set of experience points for winning the adventure,
Mm-hmm.
which is, even though it's killing the dragon. So they get to double dip on that experience points. And generally, for like minor goals or optional goals, it's half an encounter worth of experience points, and for major goals, it's an encounter worth of experience points. And then that's it. It's as simple as that. And that does not involve a hell of a lot of math.
No.
Okay? But there is a major difference between story goals and milestone experience points. Especially when you combine it with encounter experience points. Because the other thing I do is I also tell the players what they're getting experience for. At the end of each session, I go through and be like, okay, well, you defeated the carrion worm, and that's 200 experience points, or 500, whatever.
Right.
It's 500 experience points, and you got information from the little girl Newt, but you got it in a terrible way, and she ended up dead. So I'm giving you half the experience points for that, because that was pretty much the worst way to handle that and still call it a victory. So 250 experience points. and I do that so that, number one, they can celebrate their victories, and they know there's a direct connection between their victories and their own advancement. I think that's very important. Players like to feel that it was what they did that got them the experience points, instead of just, oh, you hit this point in the story, have some experience points.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. But I feel like maybe a lot of people do milestone experience wrong anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Like, milestone experience itself is not really bad or good, but the way a lot of people do it is wrong. Because, you were just explaining, like, when you do the regular experience, you tell them what they did and what they got the experience for and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I do that with milestone experience.
Which then you're not doing milestone experience.
Well, see, that's the thing is,
you're goal-oriented.
I was just thinking that it's like, wait a minute now. Because I do save it up into one bundle, and then it's like, okay, you guys have done this. You failed here, you did this here, you did blah, 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 ding, whatever. Now it's time to be level 4.
Mm-hmm. Well, so can I ask a question about that, though?
Sure.
Do you know what each of those things is worth before you hand out the experience points at the end of the adventure?
Sometimes.
Okay. And do you only hand out those bundles of experience points when when you feel it's time for them to level up? Like, oh, you've done enough now to level up.
Well, I never, when I'm doing milestone, I never directly reference the amount of experience they've gained. Like you guys earned 1,000 XP, so it's time to be level, 2 or whatever.
So you just say, okay, you did this, and this. As far as I'm concerned, you have earned level 5.
Yeah.
Level up.
Yeah.
Okay. See, I don't like that.
Okay.
And there are two things that does. Okay. Number one, it puts too much of a time separation in my mind between the thing they did and the experience that they get for it.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, it takes away their ability to track their own progress.
Mm-hmm.
To know that they're getting close to that level.
Right.
Which, you know, like, if you watch how people play, say World of Warcraft and stuff,
mm-hmm.
where they can see the level indicator, and they know how close they are to a level or how far away they are from a level, it actually changes the way they feel about the experience points.
Yeah.
So it creates a sort of, my favorite phrase, it creates a pacing curve in the experience point game.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it creates this, rising tension, climax, and then, denouement.
Right. I feel like, though, that one of the things I want to avoid at the table,
mm-hmm.
which is much harder to avoid if you do experience as written or as you have suggested, is mm-hmm. I don't want to have that moment at the table where Johnny Stormtrooper says, "Oh, I've earned a level," and then we stop, or effectively he stops even if the rest of us don't, and tries to level up his character in the middle of the game.
Well, I only hand out experience at the end of each session.
Right.
But I do hand it out at the end of each session. And there have been times where I've gone back and forth on this rule, but I also sometimes have a rule in place that you can only level up between adventures, say. So that the players know they have gained a level. And, unfortunately, watching the way players react to that, sometimes if they gain a level mid-adventure and then the session is over, but they know they can't gain a level until the end of the next session or 2 sessions later, because my adventures tend to last for about 2 or 3 sessions. And my characters tend to level every 3 or so sessions. 3, sometimes 4 sessions. Which sometimes 2 sessions at the lower levels. I found that seems to be a good rate for people. But because of the way it sort of disappoints some people, I have gone to, you can level up between sessions, even if you're in the middle of any adventure. And then basically when you gain maximum hit points, then you also heal however many hit points you just gained the maximum of, It's like if you're, if you have 3 hit points left out of 10 and you gain 5 hit points because you gained a level, now you're at 8 hit points out of 15. Stuff like that. But I've gone back and forth on that because that is the one thing where I realized that there's no really good way. I will not allow people to level up in the middle of a session, though. That's why I do experience at the end of the session. But in watching the way people react to experience, especially at the end, because my players, they remind me about the experience at the end of the session. They have to, because I frequently forget. I'm not mean-spirited or anything. It's just like, oh, don't forget to give us experience points. I'm like, oh yeah, so you did this. And what they actually seem to enjoy is the tally of what they did, and also they like to know what they did badly.
Uh-huh.
Because I have added that grading curve where it's like, if you win an encounter, you get the experience, but if you win an encounter, but you really barely won it, then you get half as much experience points. And if you lost and screwed up really bad, then you get a quarter of the experience points. That starts to encourage them not just to handle things, but to handle things well. Which I think is something that experience points are lacking. They've become sort of just automatic. And that's what I don't want them to be. It's just like you tick, 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 tick. It's just a clock that runs until you can.
Yeah, that doesn't work for me.
Right.
But I also feel like I feel like when I'm doing milestone experience or a simulation of milestone experience or whatever it is I'm doing, I feel like that I replace what would normally be the feedback loop for experience, like you've been describing, with a feedback loop in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, okay, we talk about the, you know, how they did each session, you know, and what they might have done better and that kind of stuff. So I'm still providing that feedback in there. But I like when I'm using milestone experience, I like that I have a specific purpose for it. And that is to make sure that the story or the adventure is paced to what the adventurers in it can handle, or can nearly handle in some cases. And I can do that best with milestone experience, you know? And like I said, I go back and forth depending on what I think the situation is and what it calls for, you know? I will use regular experience as regular experience when it's appropriate to do so. You know, I tend maybe to use it more as regular experience when they're off the main plot and do something. I'll throw them, you know, experience that way specifically for whatever it is they went and did.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Though, I mean, like, at this, even though I have my experience point system, if they, through their own, let's call it creativity, end up creating an encounter that I didn't plan on because they went in a creative direction, I can, using the same system, just know how much experience points they gain.
Sure.
You know, I know what an encounter looks like. So if I have to create an encounter on the fly, I can still award experience points for it. Which I also think is a weakness of doing the monster by point thing, is like everything about D&D sort of, from the way they handle experience points and monster building and all that stuff, is set up to make it really, really hard to improvise.
Yeah.
Like, it is a pain in the hindquarters to throw together a combat encounter on the fly in D&D without, I'm just going to use the word cheating. And I trust that people will know what I mean. You know, which is to say without fudging a whole lot of stuff.
Right.
You know, just so that you could throw it together in one quick blow.
Oh my God, you fudge things? Oh, you're terrible, GM. Yeah, whatever. Okay.
Well, I don't actually. I just, but like, I actually, there are a number of, to tell the honest truth. So you know the story of how Pathfinder came to be, because it was basically, it started as a set of house rules.
Right.
Right, for 3rd edition. And they had changed a lot. I am now running, at least for my current home group, and they don't know all of this, but they're going to know it now. I am essentially gradually running what I would call the Pathfinder of 5e. Because I have been gradually making more and more changes on the back end. And part of it is I have been implementing a completely different experience point system and encounter building system. Because I think one of the other things that experience points lose, and I've talked about this, and even milestones, okay, all of it loses this.
Right.
Okay, is there is no sense of what do I want to call it? Like, not progression, but power growth in the system, built into the system. Okay, so what I mean is, like, so you're a fighter, you're part of a party at first level, and you go out and you kill 4 kobolds and you gain experience points, and then you have a bunch of encounters like that, and now you're 2nd level, right?
Right.
And now you go out and now you kill goblins, right? Kill enough goblins, now you're 3rd level. At 3rd level, you go kill orcs. 4th level, you kill hobgoblins. 5th level, you kill gnolls, or whatever.
Yeah.
And you are always at exactly the same level as the challenges you're facing. Right? And the game is designed to set that up.
Correct.
I mean, I know that you're supposed to have a mix of easy and hard encounters, but overall, the average experience of an adventuring day is always supposed to be just challenging enough. And what I would like to see is more of a sense of becoming more like, I would like to see the world lag behind the players a little.
Like they're over-leveled.
I would like them to spend half their time, or I would like them to spend a third of their time over-leveled, a third of their time under-leveled, and a third of their time at exactly the right level.
Okay.
And I would like that to happen periodically. So, like, at second, third, and fourth level, for example, because first level's a mess anyway. Second, third, and fourth level, they're fighting third level challenges the whole time. At second level, they're hard, they take a lot of damage, and they can only handle so many of them in a day. Right? At third level, things are, they're now at the right level of the challenge. Right? And then when they hit fourth level, now they can, one individual encounter, they're going to trounce pretty easily. Not super trounce it, but, they're over level for the encounter. And then they can get through, like, many of them in a day, like 8 of them instead of 6, which they might have handled, or 4 that they might have handled when they were level 2. So then they get this feeling like, oh, wow, we really have gotten more powerful. Look, this is so much easier. And then they hit 5th level, and now they're facing 6th level challenges. Was it right? I said second, third, fourth. Then they hit 5th level, and now the world has leveled up. So now they go through the same progression again. Man, this is really tough. And, then second, 7th level or 6th level, now it's okay. This is getting okay. And 7th level, oh, wait, man, we're getting powerful. And then the world levels up again. And so you would divide the game into the game into tiers of play, which means that you wouldn't have monsters at every level. You would actually have monsters at every tier of play. And first level is its own tier, and then second, third, and fourth, 5th, 6th, and 7th. What's really interesting, though, is that if you dig deep into the mechanics of 5th edition, and you don't actually have to dig this deep, the game is already divided into 3 major tiers of play.
Correct.
Mechanically, and those happen at 5th, 11th, and 17th level.
Sounds correct.
I think that's right. All you have to do is look at where the cantrips level up. And that tells you, because what happens at those levels is those are the levels where wizards' cantrips, their basic spells, increase in damage by an entire die. And other character classes get additional attacks or get increased damage dice themselves. Like, that's when the rogue sneak attack goes up. And it's a little fuzzy because all game mechanics, they fuzzy them a little so that you can't see quite what's happening. But there are 3 basic tiers of play. So if you take those 3 tiers and then subdivide them into half tiers, then from 1st to 20th level, treating 1st as basically apprentice level, you have 7 tiers. Yeah, 6 tiers of play. Well, first level, I have to count. I have a chart. I did a chart because I do charts. And so, since someone asked, I think the question was, how do you handle experience? Now I have to point out that I am actually handling experience points and monster encounter building on that scale. Now, my party is only 3rd level, so I have yet to see how well it works out. Though I have used versions of this idea in games in the past, because I'm always refining it. But yeah, and that's what I would like to see built into experience point systems, is not just, this is when you gain levels. I would like to see some thought put into how the challenges in the game progress. And I realize GMs can do this stuff, but I think this stuff should be built into the system so that GMs do not have to be expert game designers to get a sense of, ability progression. Your character growing in power. Otherwise, your character just feels like they're on a treadmill.
I think the long and the short of it is do whatever works for you.
Well, yeah, obviously, but there is a best answer.
Okay, if you say so.
Well, okay. No, but seriously, like, it would not be worth having these discussions if there weren't some answers that were better than others.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, and I'm glad you can acknowledge that mine was the best answer.
Well, I talked longer, so I think I scored more points. Do you have a chart? I have a chart.
Is that how it works?
I have a color-coded spreadsheet.
Wow.
Actually, 2 of them. One for experience points and one for monster design stats.
You need to get out more.
Because I rewrote that, too.
Nitsua wrote in, I assume that's Nitsua. Does that sound right to you? Nitsua?
You're the pronunciation expert. Yeah, okay. Nitsua
wrote in via, thank you so much. Nitsua wrote in via email. I was recently listening to your discussion of mini games, which eventually meandered in over to the oft-raised question of how to play mass combat in D&D. Some of this concerned the question of whether the player stays with their character when mass combat erupts, or whether the player is no longer in their character's head. Leaving one singular character's POV seemed to be very troublesome to both of you. Can you talk a little more about this? And then they go on to answer their own question.
Yeah, of course they do. I just want to mention that staying within what character seemed to be a sacred cow to you. Yeah, okay. So if I recall the discussion correctly, first of all, I was not super opposed to the idea of temporarily allowing the players to take control of things other than their own character.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I specifically said that you could do that in mass combat easily enough, where you didn't need to assume that the characters were giving orders to particular units. You could stop playing the role-playing game to play a war game for a few minutes, and I think the characters would have fun. Or I think the players would have fun, not the characters. You know, we're reaching now the point in my game where we're going to start doing a little bit of naval combat. And that is going to necessitate a certain amount of a player taking control of the ship and the crew of the ship.
Right.
You know, and that's fine. I'm totally fine with that. But what I will say is, it is not a sacred cow to me, but it is the definition of a role-playing game. And some of the examples offered, like Microscope, I can say categorically is not a role-playing game.
Oh, hooray! We get to have an argument.
I don't know I don't know what the Adventurers League is doing now.
Yeah, I don't either.
The Adventurers League and I have parted ways, for our mutual benefit.
Mm-hmm.
They did not want me anymore.
Yeah, he's kind of, I think, I'm not sure, but I think he may or may not have understood what we were saying at the time. And I'm not 100% on that. Because he talks about in here about how they did dungeon delves as kids, or they took the party that made sense, even if that meant changing characters from adventure to adventure. I have no problem with that.
Right.
It's not that you can't ever change your character. In fact, it's not even not that you can't, get out of your character's head to do mass combat. It's just that I think the game as a mass combat experience, you want to keep your character, your player in their character, thinking about, it's not even in their head, thinking about their character and how everything works and affects their character, whatever character that might be that they're playing at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if 1 week you're playing, because essentially what you're saying is that for some reason we might have made the intimation that not only should you not ever not play the character and be in that character's head, but you also couldn't switch genres or games. And I don't think that's right. So, I mean, I have no problem with them playing different characters or even multiple characters in the same story if they want to, and you need to for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
As long as whatever character they're playing, they're thinking about that character's actions and thoughts and how events in the game are affecting that character that they are playing at that time.
Right. And I would add that as long as the player's motives and the character's motives align.
Mm-hmm.
Because I will still say that a game like Fiasco, where the player is trying to get the characters in as much trouble as possible, is not a role-playing game because you are not making decisions that the character would make based on your understanding of the situation and the character.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's required to call it playing a role.
See, then he goes on to, or she, Nitsua, goes on to, whoever it is, Nitsua, goes on to ask about... They, yes.
I know as an editor you hate it, but...
Yeah, I know.
Just use the they.
Nitsua then goes on to ask about what experiences we've had outside of that paradigm. And all I can tell you is when I was a younger, fully grown man, around fourth or fifth grade, whatever. The thing was, there were only two of us and our GM, and that was our role-playing group at the time. So we would often end up playing two different characters each.
Right.
So we had a party of four. Now, admittedly, the game was a little different back then. It was more hack and slash, dungeon crawl kind of stuff, and not so much about any kind of grand story or whatever. But it was like, okay, my fighter is going, Grog the fighter will attack with his broadsword. Meanwhile, Sparkles the magician will fling lightning bolts, that kind of stuff. It wasn't like it was a big mental shift, but again, the game was slightly different then.
See, I've done a lot playing with who the players are in control of over the years. But usually just for short periods of time, like it's a one-off thing. Like I had in one campaign where the players were unknowingly reincarnated heroes from past ages. I did occasionally hand them NPCs, and we would have one-off sessions where they would play the NPCs in a in an event in history that would then become important in the next adventure in the present.
Right. Everybody gets sent back in time to either their younger selves or their famous ancestor or something like that.
I've also done things where I've allowed the players to take control of armies. It's like, okay, while your characters are safe in command, you sent out these four armies. Go, now go play that fight. And then it becomes more of a war game, or we've done vehicle combat or like stuff like that where the players weren't strictly driving the vehicle, but I still let them be in control of it, even though they had a crew, or they weren't even the captain of the ship at that point. Stuff like that. I have no problem letting them control other things in the world, but they always come back to their characters. And of course they can change their characters too, or play different characters or whatever. Take control of NPCs, have pets, stuff like that.
Yeah. I don't know how else to clarify what we said or anything, but yeah, it's just as long as I think maybe what the big hang up was maintaining the agency of the player in a mass combat thing where you like give them command of an entire battalion or whatever, whatever that might be.
Right. And my solution to it is just, what? For the 2 hours that they're playing in that mass combat, as long as every player has a unit to control, it doesn't matter if their agency is currently suspended. If the player's agency over the characters is currently suspended, as long as I'm not going to do something like kill the characters off scene while the player's brains are controlling an army. That would be mean, though it would also be hilarious.
Yes, indubitably.
Sorry, while you guys were controlling the army, your characters got killed. No, I rolled all the rolls. It was fair.
Yeah, totally fair. Didn't fudge anything. I was reading your article on how how to what was it called again? Something GM. Who suggested this thing? Whatever.
How to be wrong as a GM.
Yes, how to be wrong as a GM.
Yeah, I don't mind that it was suggested, but then the person who suggested it then broke the rules and explained it.
Well, yeah, and I because somebody got in their little chat and said, "Well, I don't know what this means." I thought, well, okay, all right, that's fine. Whatever, doesn't matter. It's done. It's over now. But the thing is, as I was reading that article, I came across you discussing, you know, when a GM makes an encounter or whatever, or a character or something that is broken, right? And I thought to myself, well, I know what I think of when I say something is broken, but I don't know what Scott thinks of when he says something is broken, or even if we can agree on what broken actually is.
Oh, okay. When you proposed this topic in the notes, I thought you were referring to something completely different in that article. Something that has been questioned by more than a few people.
Oh, we can look at that later.
Yeah, okay. So
what do you mean by broken?
So just to be clear, you mean when I say that, you know, as a GM, you realize you have somehow broken your game.
Right.
And you are therefore wrong and now have to deal with being wrong.
Right.
Right? And your question is, what would I consider to be having broken your game?
Right.
I mean, like, when I say broken, I'm using a very, very tight definition of broken, which means something has done something, a game element has had an impact on the game that is different from the impact it was intended to have, and usually almost the opposite impact. Okay?
Okay.
For example, you design a simple situations. You design a monster. Okay? And the monster is intended to be a reasonable challenge for a group of players, right?
Right.
And then through some weird interaction that you didn't notice with the rules or whatever, the monster actually can't use any of its attacks, and the party trounces it in one turn. Right? You intended for that to be a reasonable challenge. What it really ended up being was a complete and utter cakewalk. So it didn't do what it was intended, and its impact was almost the opposite of what it should have been. Alternatively, the monster, because of the way his abilities combine, uses 1, 2, 3 attacks and one-shots 2 different characters in the same thing, and you realize that it is far too deadly for the party. Right? Broken.
Okay.
It just, brokenness is just, you have to judge it based on the design intention, and then consider whether the thing you designed is actually meeting the intention or working, you know, at a cross purpose to the intention. And it doesn't just have to be a monster, it could be anything. You know, like, let's say you design an experience point system that gives experience points per kill, and then the players start running around just murdering sheep because you have made everything in the game worth experience points. That's an unintended effect. You didn't mean for your experience point system to get the players to go kill sheep. You just wanted them to go fight monsters. You have made a broken game element.
Okay.
You know? And it's highly subjective.
Right.
I won't deny that.
See, where I get hung up is you say something is broken, right? And I think to myself, I'm the GM, right? Now, yeah, I might have designed something that's broken. Maybe I didn't check the numbers well enough or whatever, okay? It's for some reason it's broken. Things are out of whack and it's not doing what you want it to do.
Right.
Are the players going to know it's broken?
It depends on what actually happens. And they may not consciously know what happens, but it may interfere with their enjoyment of the game, especially if it's something in the long term. Like I said, imagine that experience point system where you create that experience point system that inadvertently encourages the players to wade into flocks of sheep and just murder them for the experience points.
Sure. Boiling ants.
Okay. Right. Now, players, they will do that because they want the experience points, and players will respond to an incentive like that. But it is not the way they want to play. It's certainly not a fun way to play the game. You know, and I mean, we both watched that video, various ways that game designers protect players from themselves.
Right.
Because players will, many players, not all players, obviously, but players will follow optimal strategies, even if they optimize the fun right out of the game for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you design a bad monster that absolutely murders half the party before the party could even take an action, and you realize that your numbers were really off, yeah, they kind of will notice that something was really wrong because they feel completely powerless. You know, they feel like there's nothing they could have done differently, and they couldn't. You know, they had no way to impact the game. If you design something that's like a system of let's say like an exploration system that tracks tracks food use, right?
Uh-huh.
And suddenly your players get hung up for 2 sessions on making sure they have enough food so that rather than exploring the wilderness and stuff, they go out hunting and foraging and slow themselves down and stockpile food. I actually had that happen recently.
Okay.
You know, is that it wasn't, I didn't let it go so long that it stopped killing the fun of the game.
Right.
But I was smart enough to realize, like, oh, wow, if I make this food thing too big an issue for too long, they're just going to become obsessed with stockpiling food.
Right. And here's kind of what I'm getting at. You're the GM. Yeah. You can adjust things that appear broken to you before they're broken to the players.
Yes.
So is broken really broken if you can adjust it on the fly?
Is broken really broken if you can fix it?
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask you a question. If you drop your teacup on the floor,
right,
but you have glue,
uh-huh,
is the teacup really broken?
Only temporarily.
Yes, but until you take another action to counteract that, then yes, it is broken.
Mm-hmm.
And once it is broken, like, you know, I mean, I feel like I don't want to... If I was having this conversation with anybody else on the internet right now,
right,
I would be yelling at them for making a semantical mountain out of a molehill.
Sure.
Because, like, does it really matter if like, it's only temporary broken, or does it count as broken?
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I take you seriously, and okay, I know that you're not just arguing from a place of arguing.
Right.
But the thing is, yes, you can design a broken element. You can recognize it as broken before it can break the game. And then you can take an action to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
But you first have to actually recognize the brokenness.
Right.
And there, you could let things get out of hand and start affecting the fun of the game before you realize, oh, that's what's broken.
Uh-huh.
Right? Or, depending on the complexity of the system involved, a fix you make could break something else or make the thing continue to be broken. Or the fix that you need could be so complicated in itself that you decide that it is not worth fixing and you just discard the game element altogether. Right? Like let's say you drop the teacup and it shatters into a gajillion pieces, where if you sneeze, you have lost half the teacup. Then you're not going to try and glue it back together. You're just going to sweep it up and throw it in the trash.
Correct.
But all of those things require you to recognize that it's broken and then assess how to fix it. Right? There's a thought process between broken and fixed or discarded.
Yes.
And I think that's the point that you need to focus on, not the, well, is it really broken if it can be fixed? You know, it's like that's just assuming that the fix happens, where I don't think it's that automatic, where, oh, you can just fix it. Like, well, maybe you can, maybe you can't. Maybe in fixing it, you break something else. Maybe it takes a lot of tweaks. You know?
Okay.
The timing belt in your car could be off. You could fix it, but you could still get it wrong or whatever. I don't know how timing belts work. Or you fix it, you don't realize the timing belt is actually worn out, and then the next time you go driving thinking it's fixed, the timing belt snaps and your transmission falls off the carburetor.
Right.
That's how cars work, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Good enough.
You know what I'm saying?
Close enough, yeah. Okay, so then I have some slightly more specific questions for you. Can a game be broken? I'm not talking like a video game. I'm talking like a tabletop game, RPG. Can an RPG be broken?
Absolutely. If the designers intended for it to do one thing and it does something else.
Is the designer the only one capable of making that decision?
No, but okay. See, now this is the thing, because the word broken gets thrown around a lot.
Ta-da, here we are.
Right. Here. Well, why don't you just start with the actual issue?
Because it's more fun this way.
Okay, fine. The word broken does get thrown around a lot. And I know why you're saying this and where you're going. Mm-hmm. People use it carelessly. Okay? If you want to argue that a game element is broken, no, and there's okay, I have 2 points to make here.
Go for it.
The first point is this. If you want to argue that a game element is broken just to prove that it makes the game bad, then your motives are already suspect, and I really don't care what you have to say. Okay? I have argued in the past on my website that certain elements of games like D&D are in fact broken. That they are intended to do one thing, they do something else. And then I go ahead and either say, and this is why you should remove it from your game and replace it with this, or this is how you could rewrite it to make it work better. Okay, I provide an action, a remedy.
Sure.
Any idiot can diagnose a problem. That diagnosing the problem doesn't help anybody. Okay, so that's the first part. The second part is, if you want to argue that something is actually broken, and you're gonna try to make this an objective claim, like objectively, this element of the game is broken.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, fine, you can try to make that argument. But you sure as hell better prove to me that you know what the game was intended to do, why, or then you have to show me how the game's mechanics are creating something different and how the different thing is working at a cross purpose to what the game designers intended. Okay, for example, 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons. The game designers made it very clear in multiple interviews and in preview materials that one of the things they wanted to do was reduce or eliminate the 15-minute workday problem from D&D. That was their words. They then created the system whereby every character class has daily powers that could only be gained by taking a long rest, by sleeping for the night.
Okay.
This created an optimal strategy where you could use all of your most powerful abilities in one fight, then retreat, and then go to sleep, and then come back and fight the next encounter. It actually exacerbated the 15-minute workday problem. It made it a better strategy. Okay. The fix they included, the milestone system, where you gained an action point in return for going through 2 encounters in a row. The action point payoff was not nearly enough of a payoff to encourage players who were interested in optimizing in that way not to do it. For me, is my argument as to how the daily powers issue is broken vis-a-vis the 15-minute workday. Because the designers stated an intention, they created a mechanic that worked against that intention, and the counterbalancing mechanic was not strong enough to bring things back into balance. Okay? If you want to argue something is broken, you have to be prepared to make an argument with at least that much rigor. Otherwise, it's merely something you don't like.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And this is the thing. People need to learn that it's okay to have an opinion and say, hey, this aspect of the game, I don't like it. Going back to the Milestone experience thing, because this is hilarious, okay? I have argued many times objectively against Milestone experience for some of the reasons we talked about tonight and many other reasons that I haven't talked about.
Right.
Right? And I've always had people come back at me with this, that, and the other argument. The one thing no one has ever said is, well, I use Milestone experience points because I like it. You know, which you open with that, and then it's like, fine, then I got nothing more to say to you. You like it? Good. Use it. It works for my group. Oh, good. Then it does. Go ahead.
Yeah.
You know? But the thing is that people try to elevate their qualitative, subjective, emotional opinions of things to statements of objective fact, because we think somehow that just liking or not liking something is not strong enough. We can't just not like it. If I don't like the thing, I have to be able to prove it's bad. Because if I can't prove it's bad, then it's possible that I'm not liking something that is actually good, and that means my tastes are flawed. And I can't have that. Therefore, if I don't like something, it must be because it is bad. And in role-playing games, the baddest thing that you can have is broken. So people argue this mechanic is broken, or that game is broken, or this is totally broken. And you want to make that argument, you have to have a better, more rigorous argument than this is broken because it's broken.
Okay, you have to show your work. Yeah.
Show me what the designers were trying to do. Show me how the mechanic that they created to do that thing is doing something different. And show me that that different thing works at cross purposes to the thing that they originally intended. Then we can talk about broken. And then after you have argued that a thing is broken, then I'm going to turn to you and say, okay, so what? Fine. Yep, you're right. It's broken. That thing is broken. It's a broken thing. Now what?
So you know where I'm coming from then.
I know where you're coming from. And that is, again, I'm not careless with my words like most people are.
Well, see, I knew that, and that's why I asked.
Yeah.
Because I could ask somebody else, and I don't like it. And, like you were saying, that's not good enough. That's not broken.
Well, that's the thing is they won't have a good reason. It's broken because the players. It makes some players do things.
Yeah.
Like I love the argument. I frequently going back to the experience point thing because that's on my mind right now. People are monster experience points per monsters are broken because it encourages the players to go out into the forest and just kill boars until they get 20th level. And okay, let's be realistic here. I know I used that sheep example before, but that was just an example. Because realistically, you ever seen a group of players do that?
No, not really.
Right? I mean, it doesn't, because that's not a possibility in the game.
Mm-mm.
The GM would have to create that possibility for it to exist, and no GM worth his salt would create that possibility or reward it. Now, functionally speaking, should there be a safeguard in the system that prevents that and doesn't assume that the GM is smart enough to not allow something that is obviously not fun? Yeah, I guess maybe, but the GM is part of the game mechanics, and the GM is that safeguard. But you also have to be careful arguing that too much, because if you assume too much skill on the part of the GM, then you get a game that can only be run by certain people and provide a good experience. The more you rely on the GM to be an expert game designer, the fewer GMs your game is going to have that are good.
Right.
Right. So and that is all why this stuff is so fuzzy anyway. It is all subjective. Even the argument about something being broken it's a semi-objective thing if you can say, well, this was the intention, this is the mechanic, this is the impact, and the impact is opposite the intention. Yeah, then you can make a strong case for it. But the best you can ever do is make a strong case. You can't prove something is objectively broken because you're still guessing. Unless the game designer comes along and says, look, we made it to do this. We watched all of the players play the game and they all did this instead. Yeah, we made a broken mechanic. And then they have come out and said that. This is broken. It's not working the way we wanted it to.
You know what else is broken?
Yeah.
My clock, because we're out of time.